morning, third grade. Our target for today is I will use a marked number line to explain why two labeled fractions are or are not equivalent. So third grade, to start our lesson today, let's review a few words that we know. We know that when we're talking about a fraction or fractions, the unit is the whole, the amount that's divided into equal-sized parts. On a number line, the unit is the distance from 0 to 1. A unit fraction is what we call one of the equal-sized parts that a unit can be broken into. Equivalent means equal, or covering the same distance from 0 on a number line. Non-equivalent means unequal, or not covering the same distance from 0 on a number line. So third grade, let's take a look at these fraction strips and remind ourselves what we know about equivalent fractions. We're going to use these fraction strips to represent fractions. I'm going to fold this fraction strip into 4 equal-sized parts. What would I call the unit fraction? You're right, the unit fraction would be 1/4 because there are 4 total parts that the unit's broken into, and the unit fraction is one of them. Now we're going to take this fraction strip and break it into 3 equal parts. Here you can see now we're taking that same number line with 4 parts and shading 3 of the parts. What fraction is shaded on this strip? You're right, when 3 of the 1/4 parts are shaded, the fraction is 3/4. Now we're going to fold the fraction strip so that there are 2 equal parts in each fourth. I'm going to draw lines on the fold so we can clearly see that here. How many equal-sized parts are there now in this unit? You're right, there are 8. So now the unit fraction is 1/8. How many equal-sized parts are now shaded? 6, I agree. So what fraction is equivalent to 3/4? 6/8. They're equivalent because they cover the same amount of space on the unit. We can, as you've seen previously, we can take fraction strips and use them to help us think about number lines. Here you can see I've taken this fraction strip that's broken into halves, and I have shown how a number line can also be broken into halves with 2 equal-sized parts. Similarly, I can break a number line into fourths with 4 equal-sized parts. So here you can see on this one number line, I'm showing both halves and fourths. And you can see that some of the fractions are equivalent because they cover the same space. 0 halves and 0/4 are equivalent because they cover the same space, they share the same tick mark. 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent because they cover the same amount of space and they share a tick mark. What other 2 fractions are equivalent on this number line? I agree. 2 halves and 4/4 are also equivalent on this number line because they cover the same distance from 0, they share the same tick mark on the number line. So now third grade, we're going to go ahead and look at some more equivalent fractions. You can see here I have 3 different number lines. We're going to start by labeling every single fraction on these number lines, and that will help us find some equivalent fractions. Let's go ahead and label these tick marks. So I can see that this unit from 0 to 1 is broken into 2 parts. So I know that these are halves. Here is 0 halves. Here's 1/2. And here's 2 halves. Look at this next number line. Again, the unit is from 0 to 1, and this is broken into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So here is 0/4 and 1/4 and 2/4 and 3/4 and 4/4. Finally, look at this bottom number line. It's broken into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. So these are 8ths. Here is 0/8. Here is 1/8. 2/8. 3/8. 4/8. What would this next tick mark be? I agree. This is 5/8 and 6/8 and 7/8 and 8/8. So now we can see all the fractions on these number lines. Let's go ahead and find some equivalent fractions. Find some fractions that are the same distance from 0. We will use this light blue line to help us first. When I look at the number line with halves, I can see that there are no fractions that are the same size as this light blue piece. So there are no fractions that are this size on the number line with halves. But if I go to the number line with fourths, I can see that, from 0, I can see that this is 1/4 of the number line. If I take that same line and I go to my 8ths number line, I can see that there's also a fraction that's that size. 2/8 covers that same amount of space from 0. Since 1/4 and 2/8 cover the same amount of space from 0, I know that 1/4 and 2/8 are equivalent because they're the same distance from 0. Let's go ahead and use the blue line to find equivalent fractions. Ooh, I can see this dark blue line is 1/2 of the number line that shows halves. Well, let's see how many fourths that is. Ooh, I can see that this dark blue line is 2/4 away from 0. So I know that 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent because they cover the same amount of space. Let's see if there's a fraction on the 8ths number line that's also the same length. There is. 4/8 is the same length or distance away from 0 as 2/4 and 1/2. So that tells me that 1/2, 2/4, and 4/8 are all equivalent fractions. I'm going to go ahead and put this red line on these number lines. I want you to tell me which fractions are equivalent. Oops. Which fractions can we see are equivalent because they cover the same distance from 0? I respectfully agree. There are no fractions on this number line with halves that are represented by this red line. However, we can see that 3/4 and 6/8 are equivalent because they are both the same distance away from 0. Finally, let's use the green line to find some equivalent fractions. Which fractions are equivalent? Because they cover the same amount of space from 0. I agree. 2/2, 4/4, and 8/8 are all equivalent fractions because they cover the same distance from 0. Great job, 3rd grade. Okay. We're going to go ahead and find some equivalent fractions using this number line. I'm going to complete one of these on my own, and then we're going to complete a few together. So I can see that I need to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2. I'm going to go ahead and represent 1/2 on the top of this number line. I know that 1/2 means that there are 2 equal-sized parts that the unit's broken into. So I'll go ahead and break this top number line into 2 equal-sized parts like this. 1/2 would be right here, because it's one of the 2 spaces away from 0. If I want to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2, I'm going to go ahead and bring down my halves and then cut the halves in half. If I cut each half in half, I can see that I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal-sized parts. So these are fourths on the bottom of my number line. I can see that this fraction right here is equivalent to 1/2 because it covers the same distance away from 0. I know that these are fourths, and I can see that this is 1, 2 of the 1/4 spaces away from 0. So this fraction is 2/4. I can clearly see that 1/2 and 2/4 cover the same distance away from 0. Let's go ahead and do one of these together. I need to find an equivalent fraction for 4/6. I know that when I represent 4/6, I need 6 equal-sized spaces on my number line. I know I can make 6 by first making thirds and then breaking the thirds in half, like this. Of course, I'm going to double check to make sure I ended up with 6 equal spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I do have 6 equal spaces on my unit from 0 to 1. So I need to find 4 6. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 sixths would be right here. Here is 4 sixths. I need to find an equivalent fraction. I happen to know that thirds are sometimes equivalent to 6, so I'll go ahead and bring down those thirds I originally drew and see if there's a fraction that's equivalent to 4 sixths. Oh, look at this. I can see that this fraction here covers the same space away from 0. So I know that these are thirds because there's 1, 2, 3 parts that the unit's broken into. And I can see that this is 1, 2 of those 1/3 spaces away from 0. This fraction is 2/3. I can clearly see that 4 sixths and 2/3 are equivalent because they cover the same amount of space from 0. Let's go ahead and do one more together. Go ahead and grab a piece of paper and draw a blank number line that goes from 0 to 1. We're going to find an equivalent fraction for our 3/4. We know that we'll need to break the unit into 4 equal-sized pieces, so I'll start by making halves and cut the halves in halves. So I get 4 equal-sized parts, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and do that on your paper as well. Pause the video if you need to. Now I need to find 3/4. I know that 3/4 is 3 of the equal-sized spaces away from 0. So let's count. 1, 2, 3. Here is 3/4. If I want to find an equivalent fraction to 3/4, I could bring down my fourths and cut the fourths in half to find an equivalent fraction. So I'll bring down the fourths. You do that on your number line too. And then we're going to cut each fourth in half. Like this. Make sure you do that on your number line too. Let's go ahead and count the total spaces and see how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 total spaces. So if we have 8 total spaces, these are 8s. What fraction is equivalent to 3/4? I agree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these 1/8 pieces away from 0 covers the same amount of space as 3/4. So 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. We'll do one more together. Go ahead and make yourself another number line that goes from 0 to 1. We need to show 1/3 on the number line. So, of course, we'll break our unit into 3 equal parts. There you go. You can see I have 1, 2, 3 equal parts. And 1/3 is, of course, right here. 1 tick mark away from 0. We need to find an equivalent fraction for 1/3. I know I can start by bringing down my thirds and cutting the thirds in half to find an equivalent fraction. Go ahead and do that on your number line too. Pause the video if you need to. I want you to figure out what fraction is equivalent to 1/3 or covers the same amount of space away from 0. I agree. We've broken the number line into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal-sized parts. This tick mark that is equivalent to 1/3 is 1, 2 of those 1/6 spaces away from 0. So that is 2/6. 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. Thank you for learning about equivalent fractions on a number line with me today, 3rd grade. Have a great day.